So far, we got back at it on Sunday, had a really good productive practice on Sunday. Guys had a great mentality and a great attitude. Then I thought we had our best Tuesday practice so far of the year today, so I was encouraged to see that. I think our guys are anxious about playing, excited about playing, and ready to get out there and know that we're going to face a Houston team that's going to be really excited to play us. And it's a great opportunity for them to bounce back, and I think our guys know the challenge is going to be big for us on Saturday, and I think they're working really hard to go out and play well.
So you mentioned after the game some frustration on some things that happened.
Yeah.
After you watched the film, did any of that change?
I was still a little bit frustrated at times. I mean, just, we didn't run the ball as well as I would have liked. Now, there's some reasons. Part of those reasons were us, and part of them were scheme related, and then we tried to just stick with it. And so sometimes you kind of felt like you were banging your head against the wall at times. But, yeah, I mean, look, you want your team to get better fast. And, we had a huge amount of improvement that needed to take place from week 1 to week 2. And it did, but, you want more. You want to kind of be at that point where you say, okay, we're ready to go. And, honestly, our performance thus far this season has probably mirrored our performance a little bit last season. We had a better Colorado team we played in week 1. If we had played a really good Colorado team last year, I don't know how we would have fared in that game. You know what I mean? And so, we're still trying to find our way, and I think that I think we're headed to the right direction, and again, I like our sense of urgency to get there, and so I'm encouraged by that.
You touched on it there, kind of. This year is not too dissimilar to the last.
No. I mean, said it over and over again. I mean, 3 or 4 games into last year, we were probably slightly below average football team, and we just we kept working, and we had tremendous buy-in and leadership, and we had some guys that stepped up, and we were trying to kind of figure out, okay, it's a little bit different from a quarterback standpoint than we thought it was going to be. So now what do we do to make it easier for the quarterback we have? And so we were finding our way along, last year, and I think we're doing some of that this year with a lot of new players. We think we have some players that can be very productive and good, but there are a lot of new faces, and so we're still trying to kind of get what we want right now. But I do again feel like that we're making strides.
Your defense has forced a lot of takeaways so far. So how big of an emphasis has ball security been these last few days?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a big emphasis for us, but even more so when you play Houston. I mean, historically, if you go back and look, this is one of the things that they've been really good at is taking the ball away from offenses and creating turnovers and, pressuring people. I think that's the thing that when you look at their defense, that's what they do pretty consistently. They pressure, they put pressure on you. When you draw back and try to throw, they've got a good pass rush, some guys that on the edge that can really rush, and then some guys that can push the pocket inside. And so, when that happens, then and you get people in the quarterback's face, bad things start to happen, and they do a good job of doing that.
One of the new faces, coach, is Kendall Browse. How have you felt about his play calling?
Yeah, good. No, I think Kendall's done a great job. I mean, I think, there's been some times this year where, we've looked very efficient. We've had some drives where you just go, okay, that's what this is supposed to look like. And typically you don't see that until a little bit later in the season, unless you have a whole veteran team coming back and a lot of experience and all that. And there's been some other times where we sputtered a little bit, and so that's the key. We're just looking for consistent play. And again, I think that we took some steps in that right direction on Saturday. We just got to continue to get it out of those guys. But he's done a good job. I mean, I've been really happy. I like what we're doing offensively. I think it fits, again, who we have and what we are. And now we just need some guys to step up and solidify some positions and be people that we can count on.
Coach, after Saturday's game, you said that we need to get more consistent at the wide receiver position. What does that look like to you in terms of that whole process?
Yeah, I think the good thing is, it starts with getting a bunch of guys back. We got Dalen back today, practiced. We got John Paul practiced for the first time in a while. Savion practiced today and looked good. And so I think this is really probably, honestly, the first time this year that we've gone into the ball game with all our guys. And so I feel good about that. And, and I think that we're healthy and look forward to seeing what a week's worth of practice yields, when we get into the ball game. And so, fired up about that.
You said after the game against Nichols, it's hard to keep anyone out of the end zone. How much confidence do you think it gave your defense, moving forward, having a performance like that?
Yeah. I think a lot. I think they were really unhappy with the way they played in week one, and it's hard again when we're not here about making excuses. I mean, our job is to figure out how to get it done, no matter what the circumstances are. But we were on our heels a little bit against Colorado in the Colorado game because there was a little bit of the element of the unknown. You know what I mean? We didn't know who was going to play where and what they were going to do exactly. We had seen some stuff before, and how was this quarterback going to transition, and how much 11 personnel are they going to be in, and how much was number 12 going to play. I mean, just all this stuff. We had no idea, and so and when you're not having success and you don't really have anything you can hang your hat on because of that, you're not going into that game going, okay, if we take away these 2 or 3 things and here's how we're going to do it, then that's going to create some uncertainty for the offense. Well, you get into a game like that, you're just trying to play catch up the whole game. You're figuring out what they're doing every series, and you're on your heels, and and all of a sudden you're not tackling well, and you panic a little bit. And so I think obviously we had we knew where the receivers were going to be last week. We knew what they were going to do. We had a better sense of what we were going to see, and I think it put our guys much more at ease. And when you're at ease, then you're going to play better. You're going to play with more confidence. You're going to play faster. I think you're going to play more physical, and all that showed up on Saturday.
Your quarterback was
You guys are playing the first conference game in a new Big 12, obviously an old rival for TCU, but just talk about that, how different it is facing a team that you're not used to playing.
Yeah. This is, I think, my 6th time as a head coach, maybe to coach against Houston. A couple of times at La Tech, and then a couple of times at SMU. When your team's never played an opponent, again, there's a little bit of that unknown. Our guys have never played a game in Houston. But again, at least we can watch film, and we have a sense of what we're going to see and how we're going to see. And, it'll be a challenge for us. Anytime you go on the road and you play someplace maybe you've never played before, and you don't really know, there's a little bit of uncertainty, but at the same time, I think our guys are starting to develop some confidence and a feeling of who we are. I think every team has to kind of go through a process and start to figure out, okay, what are we and who are we and how are we going to figure out how to get this done. And I think that it takes sometimes a while to get the train put on the tracks, and then you got to push it to the top of the hill. And I think I do feel like we're getting the train put on the tracks, and we're starting to push it, which is a good thing. But as we said earlier, I mean, look, Houston's going to come out and play as well as they're going to play probably all year. They're going to be disappointed in their performance against Rice. They're going to be excited about the first Big 12 game in their stadium, and I mean, there's going to be a lot of reasons for those guys to be highly motivated.
Sonny, you mentioned that around this time last year, you saw a couple guys stepping up as leaders. Who were you seeing doing that?
Yeah, still starting to see some things. I mean, starting to see, one of the guys offensively that I've been really happy with, and just kind of his mentality, has been Chase Curtis. Chase has been a guy that's kind of been a jack of all trades, for our football program. I mean, he just does a lot of stuff on special teams. He's played a lot of football for us. I mean, he's a guy that you never question how dedicated he is, how unselfish he is. Chase has been somebody to me that's really has everybody in the room's respect. And that's good to see. I think we've got, Jack Bash is probably another guy that to me is starting to, people are starting to recognize how hard he works and what he's all about, which I'm encouraged to see that. And then, I think Coker and Coleman are both guys that are, they're captains. They're starting to kind of figure out what leadership looks like, and it can be pretty uncomfortable sometimes. You know what I mean? I think that's that's hard sometimes because it sets you apart from all the guys on your team. When you're a really strong leader, you kind of step outside the team in some ways, and that's hard for young people to do. They like to conform, and so it's a process to get there. But I do like what I'm seeing, and I do think that we're improving in that regard. And it's like we've said all the time: if you don't have great leadership on your program, that's never an excuse. That means, okay, fine. If the players aren't great leaders, well, then the coaches have to be great leaders. And so it's, if that's the case, and you don't have a ton of leadership, and that stuff doesn't start to take hold, well, then you got to do it as coaches. And if you have to do it that way, then that's okay too. It's just not the best way to do it.
What are you hoping to see from Chandler as he builds off of this?
Well, just continue to get better. I think that's the big thing with us is just, improving and getting better. And, he did a really good job last week taking care of the ball. He had 0 turnovers, threw it 30 times, really made good decisions, never panicked, was much more comfortable, did a better job running. I think he's starting to figure out, those things. When should I run? When should I not run? How should I run? All that's takes a little bit of time to figure out as a quarterback and a starting quarterback. And more than anything, I think with him, it's just getting comfortable, getting comfortable and getting confident, where you, the biggest thing that happens between quarterbacks and receivers is where the quarterback says, okay, look, I trust this guy. I know he's going to be there. And those are the guys that are going to get the balls, the ones that the quarterback trusts. And he's going to throw the ball consistently to those players because he knows where they're going to be. And so that's the thing that I'm hoping that we get to from that receiver standpoint is, where, okay, he knows exactly how this guy's going to run this route. He knows exactly how this guy's going to run that route. He knows exactly where this guy's going to be and when he's going to be there. And that's really what makes a good wide receiver. I think, to me, people talk about receivers and it's, size and speed and this and that and that other. And really it's right place, right time. And how you get there is, there's a million different ways to do it. Sometimes it's through power, sometimes it's through quickness, sometimes it's through speed. But the most important thing is just consistency.
The quarterback was at Tech last year, and now he's at Houston. What have you seen from him so far?
Yeah, Donovan Smith's a good run. What I like about him, you can tell he's a tough kid. I was really impressed with him. We played against him last year, when he was at Texas Tech and got most of the snaps in our game. I like his toughness. I like his willingness to do whatever it takes to help his team win. I thought he ran the ball well against Rice. I thought he was very, very effective. I thought they did a good job, even though they got down early, not panicking in their play calls and sticking with the game plan, and they got themselves back in the game, and he was a big part of the reason. He's got a lot of experience. I think he makes good decisions. He's done a good job so far this year taking care of the football for the most part, and so I like the kid a lot. I think he's a good football player. I think he's a good leader. I think he makes their team better. So I've been really impressed with him.
Speaking of decisions, do you have to cut down this week for travel?
We're actually going to have an expanded travel squad this week. You're allowed to do it one time a year, and this will be our game.
Okay. So what is that, but are there still some that get left at home?
Yeah. There's some guys that that you wish you could take that you're probably not going to be able to take this week. Some guys that have dressed for us, but that was kind of going to be our plan, was to use this as our expanded travel.
What do you remember about the Southwest Conference when it broke up? What were your?
I don't remember what year that was. Do you guys? Was it?
Before then,
95 was last year.
Okay, so 99, 90, okay, 95, right around there. It was, I remember being surprised. I was, barely out of college. It was one of those things, probably like people that grew up on the West Coast, just always assumed the Pac-12 was going to be around. I just always assumed the Southwest Conference was going to be around. And at this stage, I wasn't that aware of people changing conferences that often. So I remember that, it was a good league. It was great football, tons of tradition. Some crazy ball games. At that time you had Houston, who was a run and shoot team, and you had some real shootouts. I know the TCU Houston game was a wild one where Boger threw for 690 yards or whatever it was in that game, and so I remember those games. Again, probably the thing toward the mid-90s, I remember the most, quite frankly, was Houston. And, you know, being a run and shoot team, and Andre Ware and David Klingler and those guys kind of having the success that they had. And so, you know, that's kind of my recollection of it.
Was your dad?
Yeah, my dad was a Southwest Conference guy. I mean, look, he coached at Texas from 71 to 76, or maybe 72 to 76, and then, you know, was at Texas Tech for a long time. And most of the time, I think he was at Texas Tech. They were, you know, it was probably about half and half Big 12 and half Southwest Conference.
We'll go 2 more questions.
Coach, you mentioned earlier, and we all know that you have a relationship with Dana and you coach with him.
Yeah.
What was he like on the staff? Like, what stood out about him? Did you know that, hey, this guy's gonna be a head coach?
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I was young. I mean, both of us were young. You know, the funny thing about Dana and I is, you know, we were both wide receiver coaches for Mike Leach, okay? And so that's not an easy thing, because Mike was kind of really probably thought of himself as an offensive line coach, but he was really probably a receiver coach. I mean, that's probably what he spent the most time coaching. And so, I mean, it was tough. I mean, Mike was going to be on you all the time, and you know, I remember Dana and I both kind of, you know, just kind of coming through the ranks, just expecting to get, you know, yelled at or whatever, and we both did. I mean, it was just kind of part of coaching receivers for Coach Leach, and it was not an easy thing to do. But, you know, I mean, he was smart. Dana was always a good communicator. You know, I think that's so important for being a good head coach, is somebody that can communicate. I always thought, you know, Dana managed his players well. His guys always played hard. They were always tough. You know, he was obviously smart and a good offensive mind, but he was a good communicator. You know, and I think that was, to me, the thing that you could say, well, yeah, this guy's going to be a head coach someday, and probably a very successful one, because, you know, he had a vision, and he could communicate his vision to his players and to his coaches, and again, I think that's a big part of his success.
But he's truly a mummy guy, right?
He was, yeah. He played. It was interesting. So Dana, you know, Hal was the head coach at Iowa Wesleyan, and so at that time, you know, Hal Mummy and Mike Leach was the coordinator for Hal at Iowa Wesleyan at the time, and Dana played there. I think Dana grew up in a little small town in Iowa, and played for Hal and Mike, and so knew those guys, you know, many years before I did. And so it's funny, you know, when I went to Kentucky, I used to hear Mike talk about Dana. He called him Little Dana, and he always talked about Little Dana all the time. And I'm like, who is this Little Dana guy he's always talking about? And then, you know, had a chance to meet him, and then we had a chance to work together. And, you know, I loved working with him. I mean, look, truly, Dana feels like part of our family in a kind of a strange sort of way. I mean, I know his kids. You know, his son Logan's, I think, the world of him, and got a lot of respect for Dana, and you know, I think it's just a relationship that goes back a long time, and I think there's a lot of mutual respect there.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay, thank you guys, appreciate it.